Okay, my project is on Android.
Game development. Wait a second, start the slash before I start talking. Yeah, I have a demonstration loading in the background, so it might be a little laggy at times. Okay, what my project is about? It's about learning code explicitly to know OpenGL ES. If you know OpenGL, well, ES is the mobile version of it. It teaches you how to do OpenGL on a mobile platform, so you create games and apps that are basically more of a game type of environment. So what my project is going to do is teach you how to make effective games to solve Android gaming programming problems. If you ever programmed anything in Android or tried to program a game in Android, it's kind of difficult because one, the different piece of hardware, two, the various SDKs, and three, is written in Java. So at a certain point, you're going to have to write something in the Android native development kit in order to make your game more effective and work quickly enough so you can process all the data for a game. Because games are usually more data intensive than apps, especially on the mobile space. Things like the iPhone don't have these problems because it's written in very basic C, and it's easier to write games like that than in Java. So what I'm going to be using is a 2D game engine. At the time I started learning, there weren't a lot of 2D game engines, so I went out and I searched for one. And if you ever program anything in Android, you might have come across the former Ndev. The creator of Ndev, Nicholas Bramlich, well, he created a 2D game engine called Andengine. And at the beginning of June, I started helping him program and add features to this game engine in order to make it more functional and easier to use. Okay, what is Andengine? Well, it's a library for building games using OpenGL ES. It's great to use because you know it's going to work cross hardware and cross SDK, because a lot of the time we test the various games and various projects using the platform before we release another update. So you know that the library is always going to work no matter what you want to use it for, or what hardware you're using. So that's great. Two, there's a native backend, so anything dealing with physics or the touch are done in the NDK, which is faster and doesn't run on top of the Android. It actually runs on the Linux background, so it runs more quickly. So if you're doing like physics calculation in the background, you need to do really data intensive physics calculations. It's also great for that. Also, there's a lot of extensions that people created and that Nicholas had created, or other people in the community created. One is the physics engine, which was built by another game engine developer called Mario, which he offered to write a native JNI wrapper for the Box2D engine. So if you know anything about Box2D, it's the physics engine between for things like Cocoa 2D, and a lot of people using Flash use this engine because it's very quick and very effective on multiple platforms. So also there's a SVG engine, plugin. So what that does is it lets you create various icons and various designs in SVJ, and it takes the vertex and creates an actual physics body that's contoured to every vertex. So like if you drop a star or a ball, it acts like a real ball in like a physics environment. It also has a multiplayer engine and an augmented reality engine, so you can do things like that. And it also has a large community. Because Nicholas already had a large community with ndev.org, which is probably one of the biggest Android forums. He used that to grow Andengine. So a lot of people who use Andev went to Andengine because of the fact that they already used his forum before. Okay, about me and how I found Andengine. Okay, first I own a freelance development company that does mostly Android development called AppMonkey LLC. And what I do is I create various apps for different companies like Square Trade, Path Brewery, and various other smaller companies. And what I wanted to do is get into gaming, because if you've ever used an Android device or went to the market and tried to find a game, especially at the time, which is probably only 8 months ago, there aren't a lot of choices for games for Android, so I wanted to get into the market. And I also wanted to learn Android gaming. Also, don't really like OpenGL. When I first started learning it, when I was like 16 or something like that, it was very difficult to learn, and I didn't really like using it. I first learned OpenGL when I was starting to learn C, and I didn't really like it because it was kind of hard to use, and game engine is way easier to use. And at the time, there weren't really a lot of options for Android. For a game engine if you want to use Android. I think right now, at the time, there wasn't Unity 3D. You couldn't use Shiva 3D or Corona SDK, which are some of the major game engine they have now. But one thing with those three engines, they're not free, which is horrible because they're very good engines and they work really well, but none of them are free. And Andengine is 1, free, 2, it's very, very extensive, 3, a lot of games on the Android market have already used the engine. There's some examples on the next page, I think. On the last page, I'll show you some of the games that use it. How to learn Andengine. One problem about learning Andengine is that because it was really built in probably 6 to 7 months, it was a really fast development because Nicholas actually used it for his university studies for a project or a research project he was doing. So I only got onto it in probably June, which, well, it was very, very rough when I came into it. So one thing about Andengine, there's a very, very much of a lack of documentation and a lack of well-developed tutorials, which is kind of what I'm doing. The way I like to learn is, well, I've never really learned in a structural environment how to program. So what I like to do is create practical projects to do, which it works really great for me because I never learned the technical stuff. Well, now I'm learning since I'm in like a lot of CS classes here, but I've never learned how to program like most people learned how to program. So what I like to do using, well, mostly my freelance business is I take projects that other people give me and I kind of just make them and try to figure out how to do them as I go. And it kind of helps me learn how to program, or it helped me learn how to program very, very well. So I know how to create apps and games and stuff like that, but the fact is that Andengine doesn't have a lot of well-developed tutorials to teach you how to do that. And it doesn't have a lot of documentation if you're like a formal programmer and learned in a formal manner. There's lots of examples, which is the way I learned how to do it. There's small examples like it'll teach you how to drop a ball and how to make it act like it's in a physical world, but really you need more than that, and you need more structure and better, more advanced tutorials if you really want to make more advanced games. Okay, creating the well-documented tutorials. So I've created the first tutorial, which I will show you today. It's actually a block break game. So what I would do is I build the app and then I teach you how to go through each step and how Andengine works and how on each step I try to teach you how to create it, but using a practical example that you actually show people and not like a command line project that really nobody that's not a CS major is going to be interested in. If you show them a game that you created on Android, especially the one I've created, which is kind of interesting looking, even though it's not a full game, it's still interesting looking, that most people will see it and say, oh, and automatically know what the game is and automatically know the functions and stuff like that. Some of the things I'm going to do is like create spot modifiers and teach you how to add things to the world and teach you how to use the level editor or create a level editor, which is one thing a lot of people wanted to learn from Andengine. Since I'm one of the moderators and one of the overseers for the website, is they want to create a level editor, which is hard to do, but I've done it and I think a few other people have, so I'm going to show you how to do that. Generic pools and teach you about memory management and stuff like that. So here are some of the games that have been created using Andengine. If you looked on the Market Android page when it first came up, you might notice